invite you to turn with me to 1 Kings chapter 3 and 4. I won't read all of that to you, but that's the passage we'll be looking at together today. So I had a friend growing up. His dad worked at the local grocery food store. In fact, he worked his way up and eventually became the manager at our local grocery food store. And then one day, he won the lottery. So the very first thing that he did upon winning the lottery is what some of you would do, maybe not all of you. Some of you would have to play the lottery to win the lottery, but he did, and he won the lottery. So the first thing that he did is he went into his boss and he said, "You can take this job and shove it." And then the second thing that he did is he bought himself a lakefront mansion. When you say mansion, you're like, well, what do you mean by mansion? What I mean by that is this place had 6 bathrooms and 13 bedrooms, and he lived by himself. So you've got one bathroom for every day of the week. And then when he had his lakefront mansion, he bought 1 sports car for every day of the week. And he put them in his 8-car garage. And I don't know what he put in the other one, but he had 7 different sports cars. And it seemed like from all external appearances that he was living the life. Fast forward 10 years, and his mansion was gone. All of his cars except for one were gone. And we would see him around town driving that one, and we kind of knew the story. But other than that, those were all gone. Everything was gone. And you would ask yourself, well, what happened with that? Well, what happened with that is the lottery gave him all kinds of resources, but the lottery doesn't give somebody wisdom. And the lottery gave him opportunities, but it didn't give him any character. And I think that's the mistake that we often make. We assume that our biggest problem in life is lack. So we think things like this: if I just had more money, if I just had more influence, if I just had one more opportunity, if I just could find one area of success, then things would be different. But sometimes the greatest need that we have is not the things that we're asking for, but it's that we haven't developed the character yet to carry the things that we're asking for. So imagine this with me. Tonight when you go to bed, sometime while you're sleeping, God shows up in a dream and he says this to you: "What do you want me to give you?" So tonight, that's the question. So I want you to answer that question, not out loud. It's rhetorical, but I want you to answer that question. No filters. I don't want you to give me the church answers. I don't want you to pretend anything. But seriously, what would you ask for? Because what we ask for most often reveals what we really trust in. Here's what I mean by that. If you're exhausted, you would probably ask for relief. If you're hurting, you may ask for healing. If you're struggling financially, you'd ask for provision. If you feel like you've been overlooked, you might ask for recognition. If you feel like you've been betrayed, you might ask for justice. And if we're honest, some of us would ask for control. Just enough control to make sure that nobody ever hurt us like this again. But seriously, what would you ask for? That's exactly where we find this guy by the name of Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 3. God shows up one night in a dream and says, "Solomon, you can ask me for anything, and I'm going to give it to you." That's exactly what he was dealing with. So a little bit of the backstory. By the time we get to 1 Kings chapter 3, David, who had been the king, he's now died. And the kingdom now rests upon Solomon's shoulders. He's young, inexperienced, overwhelmed, and suddenly God gives him this incredible opportunity. What do you want me to give to you? It's 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5. And Solomon's answer changes everything. most people spend their lives chasing outcomes while neglecting the inner life needed to support them and handle them. So we want things like success, but we want success without wisdom. We want influence without character. We want authority without humility. We want blessings without dependence upon God. And honestly, many of us are exhausted because we've spent years asking God to change our circumstances while resisting the deeper works that he wants to do in us. I told Pastor Matt this morning, we were in between rehearsal and when we were going to lead in worship, and I said to him, these are the messages that I hate, and here's the reason that I hate messages like today, because I'm preaching it myself. So I've lost count this week of the times that I've been working through it and studying and getting things ready, and I'm like, that's me. I'm talking about me. So when I talk about we're praying for circumstances to change, man, I'm right there with you. Anybody praying for circumstances to change? Yeah, that's me. I'm right there with you. And in a little bit, I'll talk about how long I've prayed for some of those things to change. I'm right there with you. But I think sometimes God is slow to change our circumstances because he wants to change us. And we spend all of our time talking about these circumstances. And he's like, nope, I want to get at you. And then I can trust you with those circumstances. We ask for bigger platforms. That's not me at all, but maybe there are some people who pray for bigger platforms. That I definitely have prayed for an easier life at times, right? Things are just difficult. Somebody asked me this morning, they're like, well, what kind of week was it for you? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I've blacked out multiple times. I don't know what kind of week it's been. It's just been, I can tell you it's crazy. So I've prayed for an easier life. I've prayed for faster breakthroughs. It's not that I don't believe breakthroughs are coming. It's just, Lord, could you do it a little bit faster? I think that's a fair request. So, I can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but do we have to move it at a snail's pace? Can we just move this thing along a little bit faster? Or maybe we pray for more opportunities or better opportunities. Meanwhile, God's asking this: can I trust your heart if I give you what you're asking for? And I think that's the real question. It's the question beneath the question, because unmanaged success destroys people faster than anything else. Did you know that? So we all want success, right? But if we're not careful, we get success and then it destroys us. We spend a lot of time worrying about whether we're capable enough or gifted enough, connected enough, experienced enough. But God's often asking this simple question: not can you do it, but can I trust you with it? One leader observed it like this: it is far more difficult to remain faithful in success than to endure failure. Think about that for a second. Do you get what he's getting at? How many of you want to fail? Good. I'm glad. How many of you would like success? But see, here's the problem. So if that guy's right, here's what he's saying: that it would be easier for us to fall flat on our face and fail than for us to remain faithful if we succeed. Because when we succeed, we start taking things for granted. And it can be the ruin of us. Somewhere along the way in this process, we stop asking ourselves, how can I be faithful? And we start asking, how can I avoid failure? And that's not rebellion. That's fear, and fear easily becomes a trap because fear of failure doesn't produce faithfulness, it produces hesitation. Instead of moving forward in obedience, we start protecting what we already have. But God's never called us to play defense. He's called us to be on the offense, to move in obedience with him, to move forward in faith and to trust him. In fact, here's where it starts to get real personal. And this is one of the times that I'm like, man, that's me. I'm preaching to myself. So when I came here 20 years ago to pastor here, one of the things I said all the time was this, and I say this as confession because I think I got this wrong. So when I came here 20 years ago, one of the things that I was famous for saying is this, that things are so good, I just don't want to mess it up. How many of you heard me say that 20 years ago? I mean, it's just good. I just don't want to mess this up. Well, you know what that is? That's fear of failure. And we start to protect what we have instead of continuing to press forward. And we start making all of our decisions based upon that understanding of, hey, I just don't want to mess this up. Well, that's nothing more than the fear of failure. Now, I mean, you can put lipstick on a pig, but how many of you know if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig? I mean, so I can make this sound like it's all fancy and stuff, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. That's just still the same fear of failure. So let me summarize all of it this way. The greatest threat to your future is rarely a lack of opportunity, talent, or potential. Most of the time, the greatest threat to your future is the condition of your character. Capacity will open doors. Competency creates opportunities, but character determines what happens once you're on the other side of that door. And what makes Solomon's response so remarkable is this. When God offers him anything that he wants, Solomon doesn't brag about his strengths. He doesn't point to his pedigree. He begins with humility. This is verse 7, 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 7. This is just so good. I'm only a little child, and I don't know how to carry out my duties. So God shows up in a dream and says, I'll give you anything that you want. And he has this opportunity to ask for anything. And he says, hey, listen, I'm just a little child. I have no idea what I'm doing. That's his immediate response to the entire thing. Have you ever felt that way? Maybe you would say it like this. Maybe you might say it differently. Have you ever felt like you're in over your head? Have you ever thought, what in the world am I doing here? I mean, I've got myself into a real mess here. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to fix this. And that's Solomon. I don't know, things that kind of get us that way, or our diagnosis, a difficult conversation, parenting a teenager. Leading a ministry, caring for aging parents, standing beside a hospital bed. And all of a sudden you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't know what to do. That's Solomon. He has a crown on his head, but underneath all of it, he's saying, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why it is this way. I've spent most of my life studying people. It's just fascinating to me. I've been the guy who goes to an amusement park and rides one or two rides, and sometimes just out of exhaustion, and also because I love studying people. Like Denise and I have sat at Kings Island at one point. I think we rode 2 rides that morning right after Vacation Bible School. We're exhausted, so we ride our 2 rides that I wanted to ride. We spent most of the day just sitting on a bench, talking to each other, watching people, and I kind of elbow her and like, did you see that? That was incredible. Did you see that? And like, I didn't even know what that was. What's going on? I've entered the twilight zone, but I just love studying people. I've done it most of my life. And I've noticed that when the pressure comes, everybody moves in one of 2 directions. There are people who get loud. Like when the pressure's on, some people get loud. And if you aren't somebody who gets loud, then the only other direction that I've seen in people for studying people most of my life is if you don't get loud, the only other option is to get low. But you'll move in one of those 2 directions when the pressure's on. I've spent some time as a baseball umpire. If you know anything about baseball umpires, you have people who are in the field, you have a home plate umpire. I could do both. I was licensed to do both. I really didn't like being in the field. It was too slow paced for me. In high school, I was a catcher, And because I was a catcher, I feel most at home behind the plate. So I like being the home plate umpire. And he's also the guy who's in control. This will shock you. I like being in control. I enjoy it tremendously. I mean, as a catcher, I ran the team. So like whatever I said happened on the field. And if that wasn't the case, the coach would back me up, and then they were going to pay for it. I was in charge on the field. I love being a home plate umpire. And I've also spent some time as a basketball referee. And you may not know this, but do you know for both of those two things that you have schooling that you have to go to? So like people in the stands, I don't think they often understand that, because they're like, you're an idiot. Well, maybe, but they're a well-schooled idiot. You have to understand that, right? I mean, they've been through schooling. They do know what they're talking about. And one of the things that I would say all the time in both of those roles is, I can only call it like I see it. And I understand that you might have a different perspective than I do. And maybe you're right. But I have to call it like I see it. But I've spent time in both of those roles. I love being a baseball umpire, specifically behind home plate. I would turn down games if I was in the field. I didn't really like that much, but I liked being behind home plate. I liked calling balls and strikes. I enjoyed everything about it. Still to this day, I love being a basketball referee. I absolutely love it. It's great, great fun to me. So, I mean, I've spent some time in both of those. And here's the thing, though, that in both of those schools that they would tell you. So, like, there are times that you have to make a call, and you're not quite certain what the right call is. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's so close, you're like, I have no idea what it is. And you know what? In both of those camps, I can't speak to football and other sports. I've not been in an official capacity like that. But in both baseball and basketball, do you know what they'll tell you to do when you're not sure about a call? They'll tell you this: make a call and make it loud. So the more uncertain you are, the louder you get. Do you know why? Because then at least gives the impression that you know what you're talking about and that you're saying it with conviction. It might be absolutely wrong, but you said it with conviction because you get loud, right? And now you know the secret. So like when you see a questionable call and whoever's making the call is super loud, you know why they're loud? It's because they have no idea what the right call is. And like I'll rehearse that in my head. You know, like I'll be like, okay, I have no idea what the right call is, so just say it loud. Say it with your chest, say it loud, right? But here's the truth. No one needed to teach me that. That's just human nature. You say, well, I might disagree with you, Phil. I mean, not everybody who's under the pressure, not everyone gets loud and they don't get obnoxious like that. Not everyone does that. Yes, that's true to an extent, but what sometimes happens is they get loud on the inside, right? So they may not express that outside. They may not look like a maniac. They may not scream at people, but they're screaming on the inside. Come on, you know that I'm right. So people either get loud, and it's just our human nature to get loud. When things are uncertain and we're not certain what we're supposed to do, and we have all those questions and confusion, we tend to get loud. It may not be on the outside, but we might just get loud on the inside. But how many of you know that the noise starts to amplify when we don't know what to do? And I don't know about you, I find myself there more often than I would like to admit, and I think to myself all the time, there's got to be a better way. Well, there is. And it's what Solomon did. And it's to get low. So when things aren't going right, we have the choice of we're either going to get loud or we're going to get low. Solomon decided to get on this other path, and he got low. My favorite example of this principle in all the Bible, and it really is my favorite, Adele, before you give me a hard time. You don't need to turn over there. You can write this one down. It's my favorite example of this. I'm talking about, so the pressure's on, and you're either going to get loud or you're going to get low. My favorite example by far is 2 Chronicles 20, verse 12. Write it down. Check it out this week. You don't need to turn over there. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 12. This is what it says. I mean, the people are in a horrible mess. You have this guy, he's the king, and he's willing to admit that they're in a mess, and the people know that they're in a mess, and everyone knows that they're in a mess. And this is what the king says. God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Come on. I don't know who needs to hear that, but somebody does. Man, I just want you to know that there's hope in that. That when things are upside down and you don't know what to do and you don't know where to run, I'm just telling you that if you would just say, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. If you'll just get low and take that responsive humility and say, I don't have to have this all figured out. It's not on my shoulders. But God, I'm looking to you. You're the only one who can get me through this. That God responds in that moment. And it's a far better response than getting loud. Man, I'm preaching to myself today. I don't know who that's for, but maybe it's just for me. So that's Solomon's posture. This responsibility is too big. The task is overwhelming. He doesn't have the strength, the wisdom to get through it on his own, yet he has something more valuable than all the talent or experience, and what he has is character. He has enough humility to admit that he has a need. He has enough character to recognize his own limitations. He has enough wisdom to know that before he needed a throne, he needed God's help. And that posture positioned him for everything that followed. So when God asks, what do you want me to do for you? Solomon responds, give your servant a discerning heart. It's verse 9. Give your servant a discerning heart. Not riches, not revenge, not fame, but wisdom. Because wisdom changes how you handle everything else. How many of you know that we live in an age that we have more information than any other generation in all of human history? And we have it at our fingertips to our demise. Like it's not good for us to have access to everything that's going on in the world in a moment's notice. It's just not good for us. So we're on information overload all the time, but we have all this information that's available to us. And yet, why is it that we have all this information that's available to us and things like depression and anxiety are at an all-time high? I don't know if you realize this. So, like, not only is depression and anxiety at an all-time high, that struggles in marriages are also at an all-time high. We used to say, hey, you know, you want to be a part of a church because if you're a part of a church, at least it gives you a better chance. So like marriages who are in the church, they have better odds of surviving than marriages who are outside the church. So get your butt in church because it will help you. And you know what the studies are today? It makes no difference whatsoever. Your chances of having relational struggles in your marriage are no different whether you're in the church or out of the church. That's the reality today. So you have families who are fractured. It's all around us. Couple that with the fact that people know more now than ever before, and still we're in this situation. Well, what in the world does that all of that mean? That information is not the same thing as wisdom. You can know all the facts and still ruin your relationships. You can quote scripture till you're blue in the face and still not have a lick of discernment. You can have talent and still destroy your soul. You can build a platform and still lose your family. Our culture celebrates being loud. Scripture celebrates being wise. And wisdom is becoming increasingly rare because wisdom requires some things. So if we're going to have wisdom, first of all, we already saw this in Solomon, it requires humility. You're not ever going to get wise if you're not willing to admit that you need help. So it requires humility. It requires patience. How many of you know, and don't pray to God for patience. Please don't do that. Please do not pray for patience because God will teach you patience and you're not going to like how it comes. But I'm telling you, don't pray for that. But if we're going to have wisdom, it requires patience. Wisdom's not some genie thing that you rub a bottle and all of a sudden you become wise. We learn it through hardship. We learn it through trial and error. We learn it through falling on our face and getting back up again. We get wisdom through listening, through self-awareness, through being teachable, through dependence on God. And most people don't really want wisdom. If we're going to be real honest, they want validation, they want immediate answers, immediate comfort, immediate victory. But wisdom is usually coming in the slowest form possible. It comes through surrender, through failure, through listening, through obedience. And here's the danger. Success can conceal compromise for a season. By the time you get to 1 Kings chapter 4, so this is the second chapter that we're looking at. If you look at that chapter, Solomon's kingdom is absolutely flourishing. The nation's at peace. The economy's thriving. Gas prices are down below $1 a gallon. I mean, come on. I knew that that'd get a laugh out of somebody. The borders are expanding. Wealth is increasing. Influence is growing. From the outside, everything looked incredible. Everything looked blessed. But appearances can be deceiving. Because while all of that's going on, while the kingdom's growing and the kingdom's flourishing, Solomon's heart was slowly drifting. The tragedy of Solomon's story isn't that he lacked wisdom. It's that the man who once knelt before God and was offered anything that he wanted, now all of a sudden, he's not even willing to listen to the God who gave it to him. That's the tragedy. That's why wisdom is not a prayer that you pray one time or a lesson that you learn once and you're done with it. If we want to be people who have wisdom, it's something that we have to continue to lean into. We have to continue to do the things that got us wisdom in the first place. You have to continue to do it. You don't just get wisdom and you're done. You've got to continue to work at it. It's a posture that we have to maintain, a daily surrender, a teachable spirit, a heart that stays attentive to God long after the success arrives. Because you can build a thriving kingdom and still lose your way if you stop guarding your heart. 1 Kings chapter 3, let me jump back there just for a second. There's one of the most popular stories in all the Bible in 1 Kings chapter 3. And it's not really about cleverness at all. So you have these two women who come before a judge, and there's one living baby there, and they both claim to be the baby's mother. In fact, we use this outside the church all the time. This is an example that people talk about even in the world. So these two moms come, and they both say that child's mine, I'm the child's mother. And Solomon doesn't know what to do. So he comes up with this brilliant idea, which is kind of sick and twisted at the same time if you think about it. He's like, let's just divide the child, right? We'll cut the kid in two. You get half, things will be great. And the real mother says, no, give my child to this lady, right? I mean, you know this story. Well, what's that all about? That's about wisdom. And here's the lesson that it teaches us. Wisdom sees deeper than appearances. Wisdom discerns motives. Wisdom sees hearts. Wisdom understands people. And that matters because most of life is not black and white. I don't know if you realize this. Like I've told you this. I'm very open about this. I was a fantastic parent until I became one. Sometime on Thursday, you'll get that. Like I'm telling you, I could have written books. Like I had all the answers. In fact, I even taught. I was in ministry at that point, and I would even teach like parenting stuff. And now I'm like, you fool. What are you thinking? So like people will ask me occasionally, will you teach a parenting class? And I'll look at them and say, you fool. No, I won't teach a parenting class. What's the matter with you? Why would you think that I would teach a parenting class? I was a great parent until I became one. But what I have learned by parenting 3 kids is parenting requires wisdom. It's not all black and white. I don't know how to do it. I've spent most of my time as a dad completely in over my head. I have no idea what to do. And I need wisdom. Leadership requires wisdom. If you're leading anything today, and you think that you've got it all figured out, you fool. Because I promise, no matter what you're leading, you're in over your head. Marriage, You don't think it requires wisdom? Ministry requires wisdom. Friendship requires wisdom. You can't Google your way through every situation. You can't even chat GPT your way through every situation. You can't do that. There are some things in life that you need spiritual discernment. Sometimes you need God-given clarity. Sometimes you need the wisdom to know when to speak, when to shut your mouth, when to fight, when to let go, when to confront, and when to extend grace. And here's the good news. So anybody think you need wisdom? If you don't think you need wisdom, I mean this with all love and respect, you fool. Oh boy. Here's the good news. James 1:5. If you want to turn over there, you can. If not, just write it down. Here's the verse. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously. If you lack wisdom, ask God. He gives generously. Wisdom's not knowing more. Wisdom is seeing life from God's side of the table. Can you imagine with me what a church would look like if it was led by wisdom instead of ego? Can you imagine what that would look like? Can you imagine what families would look like if they were led by wisdom instead of anger? Can you imagine what marriages would look like if they were shaped by discernment instead of constant reaction? Can you imagine what leaders would look like who cared more about faithfulness than the applause of men? Can you imagine what leaders would look like if they, at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered to them is what God thought about what they did? And they could care less about what anybody else had to say about it. 1 Kings 4 says people came from everywhere to hear Solomon's wisdom. Why? Because wisdom creates stability. The world's starving for people who think clearly, love deeply, listen carefully, respond slowly, and walk humbly with God. Wisdom calms chaos. And the beautiful thing about biblical wisdom is this: it's available to ordinary people like you and me. Not just the scholars, not just pastors, not just experts, but anybody who remains surrendered to God can become deeply wise. So here's the question. If God showed up tonight and said to you, what do you want me to give you? What would your answer reveal about your heart? Because Solomon teaches us something powerful. The greatest blessing is not getting everything that you ever wanted. The greatest blessing is becoming the kind of person who can handle what God gives you. Some of us need to stop asking merely for escape, comfort, promotion, recognition, easier circumstances, and start asking for things like wisdom and discernment, humility, maturity, clarity, spiritual depth. Because wisdom will guide you through every season that money can never fix. So, I want to kind of tell you what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes that we have together. Well, 12 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple thoughts to think with me about. We're going to sing a couple songs. And I just want to give you permission to respond in whatever way you need to during those songs. Okay? Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's to ask for wisdom. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is, but whatever the Lord asks you to do, is respond that way. When that's done, there'll be a benediction. We've talked about this. Benediction means the good word. Don't leave before the good word. Stay for the good word, okay? So, I'm going to ask them to come join us, the folks who help us with worship. Aren't they getting better all the time? Aren't they getting better all the time? So some of us came today asking God to change our circumstances. And you know what? Me too. Some of you have been carrying burdens that nobody else can see. You smiled when you walked in because it's just the polite thing to do, right? I mean, don't come in here all grumpy. I mean, nobody wants that. Nobody needs that. Don't come in here all grumpy. Well, I mean, if that's the only way you can come, I'll take you that way too. But you smiled because it's the polite thing to do. You shook hands, you sang the songs, but beneath the surface, you're exhausted. Exhausted from carrying responsibilities that feel way too heavy for you to carry. Exhausted from making decisions with no clear answers. Exhausted from trying to hold everything together. Exhausted from waiting for God to move while wondering how much longer you can keep holding on. And maybe your prayers just become simply this. And this is where I'm at. Lord, fix this. There are some things that I've prayed for months. Lord, fix this. Change this. Open this door. Close that door. God, would you make this easier? God, you can do anything. Would you just make it a little bit easier? And maybe you've prayed those things with me. I want you to know those aren't wrong prayers. I don't know that it's possible to pray a wrong prayer, but those prayers are not wrong prayers. In fact, they're deeply human prayers. But Solomon reminds us that sometimes God's first answer is not to change the situation. His first answer is to change me. Because a transformed heart can survive circumstances that would crush the unchanged one. So here's what I want you to do for a moment. Would you take your hands and would you hold them out in front of you for a second? And why do we do this? I mean, people sometimes ask me questions like that. Why you ask us to do that? Well, open hands are a symbol of surrender, right? So it's just a physical posture that we're saying, hey, this help my heart to match my physical posture. That I'm coming to you with just from a place of surrender. I'm holding on to nothing but a place of surrender. And now I want you to think about what you've been asking God for. Maybe it's a decision. Maybe it's a burden. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a fear. Maybe it's a responsibility that feels bigger than your strength. And what if tonight God's asking you a deeper question? What if he's really asking us this question? Before I change your circumstances, will you trust me with your heart? Will you trust me to change you? Before I give you what you're asking for, will you become the person who can actually carry it? Before I increase your influence, will you depend on me for everything that you need? Because wisdom is not God handing you a map. Wisdom is God handing you himself. That's what wisdom really is. And when you have him, you can walk roads that you never thought you'd be able to survive. Not because the burden became lighter, but because his presence became greater. I don't know what you're asking him for. None of those things are bad prayers. Don't hear me say that today. I'm not saying that because trust me, I'm right there with you. I really have preached to myself today. I have prayed literally for months. God, please change this. Please, you're the only one who can. God, I'm begging you, please change this. But what if on the other side of the table, God's saying, before I do that, can I change you? Because in changing you, I'll take care of everything that you need. Would you just respond to him however he's asking you to do, whatever that is? Would you do that with me this morning? And would you allow this to be your prayer? God, give me wisdom. If I can have anything, I just want you. Would you make that your prayer with me today?